A very good day to everybody present. My name is Yuan, and I'll be bringing my title of Image Compression in Digital Pathology. So what is digital pathology? Digital pathology incorporates the acquisition, management, sharing, and interpretation of pathology information in a digital environment. Digital slides or digital pathology slides are created when glass slides are captured with a scanning device to provide a high resolution digital image that can be viewed on a computer screen or mobile device or transferred across the internet. These digital slides are extremely large in resolution and thus require a lot of storage space to store the large volume of data. Included here are 3 samples of digital slides. On the left is a representation of the whole slide that's being digitized, which actually holds a resolution of 109,000 pixels by 87,000 pixels. In the middle is what we usually see when we view a slide under a microscope, which is usually at 4 times optical zoom with a resolution of 16,000 pixels by 9,000 pixels. And on the right is usually what we see under the microscope when we zoom in, which is usually a 40 times optical zoom, which holds the resolution of 1,691 pixels by 969 pixels. And so what is image compression? Image compression is actually a function to compress the data in images to reduce file size. This is done through an encoder that is loaded with an algorithm to sort, process, and compress the data. So it can be of either 3 types: lossy compression, which achieves a high compression rate but suffers from visible data loss, or lossless compression, which can only achieve low compression rates but is able to preserve all data, or with a somewhat new version of it, which is near lossless compression, which achieves a medium-high compression rate and only with negligible data loss. So what near lossless compression is actually it serves to be a somewhat middle ground between lossy and lossless compression, where it can still achieve a medium-high compression ratio, but without suffering from visible data loss, with only negligible data loss that isn't really obvious to the naked eye. And so underneath there, I've included a sample of how the general compression flow works, whereby first there is an original image that's loaded, and then a forward transform algorithm is applied. And then once the algorithm is applied and data is modified, the data is then quantized and encoded by the encoder so that we can get the compressed data. And so in order to view the compressed data, we then afterwards feed it through a decompression process, which by then we feed the compressed data into a decoder, which decodes the data, and then afterwards dequantizes the data so that we can actually apply an inverse transform algorithm onto it and get the data and get back the original data from it so that we can actually reconstruct the original image. And as digital imaging advances in quality, the resolution, color depth, and detail of these images greatly improves. As per what has been shown earlier in the full slide sample, the resolutions are actually very big. And so since these images have such large resolutions and require that much details, more bytes are then actually required to preserve these data, which causes an exponential increase in image size and an increased demand for file size reduction solutions. This results in the problem of insufficient storage on devices and also slow transfer speeds across devices. Since the files are large, they take more time to transfer, especially for large images due to the large volume of data that needs to be transferred. So the aim of this research is to look into image compression as a means to reduce image size for ease of storage and also transfer, while at the same time, the compressed image should maintain a similar visual perception when compared to the original image with negligible or no loss in details. So this research is actually carried out in 4 major phases: data acquisition, where the pathology slide scans are collected and the data set is formed for this research. And then moving on to image compression, where the collected data set is actually fed through 4 different currently in use image compression algorithms. Then the phase of compression evaluation, where these compressed images are evaluated and the algorithm's compression quality is measured. And lastly, data tabulation, where all results are recorded and then averaged to represent the findings of this research in a table. For data acquisition, so the data used for this research consists of a set of pathology slide images collected at random from America's National Cancer Institute's Genomic Data Commons portal. A total of 85 images were selected at random to form the dataset. The images in this dataset were captured using an optical microscope, and each image has a dimension of 2,560 pixels in width and 1,920 pixels in height. Each image contains 4.9 million pixels and are approximately 14 megabytes each. Below, I've added 4 sample images that are taken at random from the dataset. So for image compression, so once the dataset has been prepared, it will then be fed through the image compression algorithm, the 4 different image algorithms individually for compression. So the 4 algorithms that were selected for this research: the discrete cosine transform, or the DCT for short, discrete wavelet transform, or DWT for short, Huffman encoding, and also set partitioning in hierarchical trees, SPIT. So the diagram on the right depicts the flow for the image compression function for this research. So we prepare a data set, and once the data set has been prepared, we feed that data set through the 4 algorithms. So within the 4 algorithms, the images are loaded, encoded, and compressed. And once after they're compressed, then they go through the decoding process, and they are then reconstructed into the original image, or the reconstructed image, so that we can compare that against the original images in the dataset. The process is repeated 4 times, one time for each algorithm. And once we are done repeating all of them, then the compression qualities for each compression algorithm is evaluated and the data tabulated. So how do we evaluate compression quality? The results of the compression are evaluated based on the following major evaluation criteria: compression ratio, CR, which is actually a measure of how much data is being compressed; peak signal to noise ratio, or PSNR, which actually serves as a measure of the quality of the compressed image; and also structural similarity index measure, SSIM, a measure of how much the reconstructed image resembles the original image. Right, so we move on to the results of our research. So once after all of the data has been compressed, evaluated, and tabulated, we actually get and averaged out, we actually get this table that you see here for the average compression results for each algorithm. And whereby our main points of measure are compression ratio, CR, PSNR in decibels, and also SSIM in percent. And for all these 3 criteria, the higher, the better. And so for the discrete cosine transform, or the DCT algorithm, we actually achieve a CR of 57, a PSNR of 37.2448 decibels, and an SSIM of 95.97%. So what this means is that for the DCT algorithm, we are actually able to compress the image up to 57 times smaller than the original image, with a PSNR of 37, and also by SSIM, what the SSIM of 95.97% means that the image is actually 95.97% similar to the original image. And so for the DWT algorithm, we achieve a CR of 25.24, a PSNR of 9.0928 decibels, and an SSIM of 55.86%. And for Huffman, we achieve a compression ratio of 1,660.58 times, a PSNR of 30.0957 decibels, and an SSIM of 91.75%. And last but not least, for SPIT, we achieve a compression ratio of 480.87 times, a PSNR of 35.1604 decibels, and also an SSIM of 95.78%. So based on this, we can actually observe that the DWT algorithm produces the lowest performance, and where the DCT compression produces a high PSNR and a high SSIM results, but with a lower compression ratio compared to Huffman and SPIT. And Huffman actually produces a very, very high compression ratio, but it produces a lower quality compression when compared to both DCT and SPIT, as shown by the lower numbers in both PSNR and SSIM. And for SPIT, it actually produced a very good overall result, being similar in performance with the top performing algorithm in each individual aspect. And thus we can actually see that it actually produces a quite high compression ratio when compared to DCT and DWT, and also a very high PSNR and SSIM number when compared to DWT and Huffman. And in the next slide, we would actually see how is this shown visually. And so here is actually a visual representation of the comparison of the compressed image against the original image. So on the left, we actually have the original image. And then on the right, we actually have 4 images, each representing each different compression algorithm: the DCT, the DWT, the SPID, and also the Huffman. So for the DCT and also the SPID, we can actually clearly see that it looks very similar to the original, except that with slight differences, but that will only be visible if you zoom it in by quite a lot. In the DCT, it is actually slightly more grainier compared to SPID, and whereby for DWT and Huffman, you can actually clearly see that it actually does not resemble the original that much anymore. For DWT, the exposure is off, making it much brighter than what it is supposed to be. And for Huffman, it is actually already quite starting to look blurry even at such a rough comparison. And so to conclude, so from the data that was gathered through this research, it can be clearly seen that image compression serves as an effective way to reduce the size of images, whether it be for more efficient storage or for increased transfer efficiency. This can actually be seen from the results, as we have actually achieved an approximately 50 something times up to 400 something times ratio of compression. And based on the results, it can actually be said that the SPID algorithm performs well in all aspects of evaluation. And further upcoming research should seek to further optimize the performance of the SPID algorithm, attempting to yield even higher PSNR numbers while maintaining its current compression ratio. And that will be all from me. Thank you.